What is the seismic risk for this facility, and what does that mean?
Today on Newsmakers, Governor Andrew Cuomo's call for Indian Point to shut down because of earthquake concerns. Hello and welcome to the latest edition of News 12's Newsmakers, everyone. I'm Brian Coneybear. Today, the short and the long-term effects here at home of the unfolding nuclear disaster in Japan. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission here in the U.S. and the state of New York are now taking a hard look at the earthquake risk at the Hudson Valley's own nuclear power plant, Indian Point, and the 100 other nuclear plants around the country. The question, could the Buchanan reactors handle a major quake? And will the growing public pressure ever lead to a permanent shutdown there? Joining us to discuss the safety concerns at Indian Point are two men who are very well versed in the subject with very different opinions. First, we welcome Jim Steets. Mr. Steets is the Director of Communications at Entergy Nuclear. He is often the public face of the Indian Point nuclear power plant, serving as the company's public spokesman. Thank you for being here, sir.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you.
We also welcome Paul Gallay. Mr. Gallay is the Executive Director at Riverkeeper, the environmental group dedicated to protecting the Hudson River and a leading critic of the Indian Point nuclear power plants over the years. His group has been advocating for a shutdown at IP. Thank you for being here, sir.
Of course, Brian.
We're going to start with a little background before we get the discussion going for our viewers. The earthquake and tsunami happened this month half a world away, but the fallout is still being felt here at home because of the damaged reactors and radiation releases at the Fukushima nuclear power plants in Japan. Pressure is now mounting on Indian Point. News 12's Tara Rosenblum reports the concerns over Westchester's power plant have even become part of the national discussion.
I want this Indian Point thing taken down.
I've been hearing you talk about that.
I want it taken down now. And you're a woman of power. Help me out on this.
News anchor Katie Couric responded with a laugh to David Letterman's question Tuesday night, but for the late-night talk show host and North Salem resident, the issue of whether or not to relicense Indian Point is no laughing matter. Letterman actually lives near the Buchanan-based plant and has been calling for its closure in light of the nuclear crisis in Japan all week on his show, including this comment Monday to a physicist.
But I don't want it. I didn't vote for it. I don't want it. And, you know, I can just get AAA batteries. I don't need it. What do we do to get it out of here?
I would love to go on Letterman, but I don't think he would invite me. But, you know, I just, you know, these kinds of things had a way of, you know, carrying on a life of their own. You know, we saw that after 9/11.
And just like they did after the terror attack on Lower Manhattan, Entergy spokesman Jim Steets says they've been trying their best to reassure the worried public the plant is safe, even taking out a full-page ad Tuesday in 5 major newspapers across the state.
I think it's important that people know that Entergy isn't being dismissive, while at the same time trying to demonstrate how safe these plants are.
But the ad did little to reassure Governor Andrew Cuomo, who also lives near Indian Point in Mount Kisco. And on the same day, Cuomo convinced the NRC to make the plant its top priority in an upcoming nationwide earthquake safety review and include New York experts.
What is the risk? What can you do about it? Can it be mitigated?
I think it's absolutely a good thing. I think it gives us a chance to show what our capabilities are. And if the governor reviewing it and the NRC taking, you know, a high priority toward that, I think that gets us to a better place faster.
Congresswoman Nita Lowey also taking action, announcing that she plans on introducing a bill in Washington next week that would call for stricter relicensing laws at nuclear plants, not only here at home, but around the nation. She also wants to hold special safety hearings in Congress over the next several months, and to that, Entergy says they'll be happy to cooperate and take part in them. Tara Rosenblum, News 12.
Our guests again are Jim Steets from Entergy Nuclear and Paul Gallay of Riverkeeper. Mr. Steets, let's start with you. Big picture, what do you make of all this? Is it fair that Indian Point is being kind of singled out here in the U.S. for what happened half a world away over in Japan?
I think it's fair. You know, Indian Point's near New York, and we tend to draw a lot of attention in New York, the media capital of the world. But I think it's fair locally, you know, that people should, you know, raise these questions. I mean, we all watched as things unfolded in Japan, and we all grew, you know, very concerned for the Japanese people. Paul and I talked about it beforehand, and we both wanted to express that first. But I think as people watched, they grew concerned about what that meant for us, you know, here where Indian Point is located. And so we knew right away we're going to have to go out and talk to people. And I believe we can provide reassurance that those plants are safe. There's 2 units, so I say those plants. But and particularly as we watched the events unfold and saw the impact of the earthquake, but more importantly the tsunami that took out the cooling system at those plants, I think people can take reassurance that we're not going to be faced, we're not in the same situation. Earthquakes are much smaller here. We have earthquake protections. But even with the magnitude of that earthquake, those plants seem to hold up. They shut down safely. The electric or the backup diesel generators started as designed. It wasn't until the tsunami came through that took out their cooling capabilities, took the power out to their cooling capabilities, that they had real trouble. And I think there's one thing we know about this area is that we're not susceptible to tsunamis. So if we have the earthquake protection in place, and I believe we do, and the NRC says we do, and the likelihood of a tsunami is almost nil. Yet, on the other hand, even a further look will tell you that we are prepared for the kinds of weather events you can expect here, or even further than that, those that could cause flooding that we've never seen before. And so we have, capabilities. We went into this plant design and construction recognizing that there could be external events that could create problems and prepared for them. And so we build these plants with a big safety margin, and all based on, input from, the experts who can tell us what you can expect from an earthquake, what you can expect from hurricanes, or, any other externalities. And then, of course, internal to the plant, what can you expect if this piece of equipment fails for some reason? Or if a person makes a mistake while operating the plant, it's built that equipment fails, people can make mistakes, that there'll be significant, potentially significant, even historic type of weather events that could create problems. You need to be prepared for them.
We do keep seeing flooding, that's certain. That's no question about that. Paul Gallay, Riverkeeper, does that allay your fears? What do you make of all this that's happened, A, in Japan, and B, the reaction here at home?
Well, Mr. Steets says that when the plant was built, they took into account earthquake risk. When the plant was built, we didn't understand earthquake risk, and Entergy's statements are that there could be a small seismic event of 1 to 3 magnitude on the Richter scale. We've had better equipment now. We understand that there are 2 faults crisscrossing a mile or so north of the plant, and Columbia University, not Riverkeeper, but Columbia University says we could have as much as a 7.0 quake at that plant. Now, Entergy is quoted widely as saying we can handle up to a 6.1 quake. A 7.0 magnitude quake can have 30 times more destructive power than a 6.1. So when this plant was built, they didn't understand the earthquake risk, and they've already acknowledged that they can't handle what Columbia says could be the big one.
What do you make of that? I mean, what is 6.1 the maximum earthquake those plants could handle?
Well, the maximum earthquake this area has ever experienced, the area near Indian Point, is a 3.6. We're designed for a 6. So we can handle 100 times stronger than any earthquake ever experienced here. We knew quite a bit about earthquakes back then, but we've also, and this is where I would correct Mr. Gallay, is that we also have learned more and have factored that new information into our understanding about earthquakes. In fact, the NRC has said we are bounded by that. In other words, the current design capabilities of the plant and structural capabilities of the plant tells us that we can withstand the earthquakes even anticipated with the new information that we have. That's an important consideration. Now, the other thing to understand is that these design and structural capabilities are very conservative estimates. In other words, we prepare for the worst and then we add some. And that's what they did at Indian Point, and I think that's what puts us in a good position so far as the capabilities of that plant.
You still advocate for a shutdown, don't you?
The folks who operate the Fukushima reactors, if you go to their website, it will tell you that they are designed to withstand the maximum possible earthquake. They'll say they've got safety systems in redundancy and they got backups for their backups. Anyone who tells you it can't happen at Indian Point really doesn't understand the lessons of Fukushima. They said it couldn't happen. They said they wouldn't have a 9.0 quake. They did. If there is a 7.0 quake, that's 30 times stronger than the quake that Mr. Steets says that this plant is able to have. And Columbia University says that it's quite possible that we'll have a 7.0 quake. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, this is very important, in September 2010, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission staff, using U.S. Geological Survey data, government scientist data, said that of all the 104 reactors in the country, this plant has the reactor that is most at risk for damage to the core in an earthquake of any in the country.
It's Indian Point 3,
Indian Point 3, yeah. And they said that the risk was 72% greater than previously understood. So with all due respect, yes, we understand risks better. The U.S. Geological Survey and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission say that the risk is more than they anticipated, and Entergy admits that it's more than they designed for.
Your response to that?
Well, the NRC didn't say that. The NRC did a study. In fact, they did a study that had 4 components to it. In one of the studies, there was never a ranking that was done, as this story reports, and as Paul has, alluded to. The fact of the matter is, the USGS did a study back when these plants were owned by 2 different companies. They asked for certain inputs.
New York Power Authority and Con Edison.
That's
they
right.
were the original owners. Entergy did not build them. That should be noted.
That's right. And we did not provide the data for the study. The problem is that the study asked for certain information that could demonstrate a certain threshold. The owners of the Indian Point 3 plant provided data and went no further. They could have spent more time collecting more data that would have built in more conservatisms and got a different conservatisms and got a better number that would position us with the plant right next door, where Con Ed continued to provide additional information. This is what's kind of, this should raise question marks about the study. How can one unit be ranked top in terms of risk and one only 100 feet away be ranked 25th? It doesn't make sense. They're on the same site and in the same location. So the NRC has said the point of that study was not to rank the plants. The numbers were developed to get a better understanding of the new USGS information, but the actual risks in the end the idea wasn't to get a finite risk number. The information they were looking for was information that could at least demonstrate that you had the capabilities that the NRC expected you to have, and we demonstrated that we do.
Go ahead, you want to make a point?
Yeah, if I might, Brian, we have 2 fault lines and we have 2 corroborating studies. We have the USGS study and we have the Columbia University study. And again, if you look at the charts that are associated with the September 2010 report, there is a chart that literally ranks Indian Point Reactor 3 the most at-risk plant. They call it the weak link analysis. And apparently, Indian Point Reactor 3 is the weakest link in the nuclear fleet in this country for risk of core damage due to an earthquake. There's one last thing I need to say about the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Because what makes this plant dangerous in our mind is the combination of the earthquake risk, the age and condition of the plant, and the fact that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, as characterized by an op-ed contributor, a famous nuclear physicist who wrote into the Times 2 days ago, he said the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is a textbook example of a regulator that is in the pocket of industry. It's a regulator that takes the interests of the industry and places them above the interests of the public. And I'll give you a very specific example of that. Governor Cuomo sends the lieutenant governor and others from his office down to Washington, and they get a commitment that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission will make earthquake risk at Indian Point their top priority. Within 24 hours, a spokeswoman for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, as reported in the New York Post, says we're not going to start our earthquake review until 2012 because we don't think this is a serious concern. Now that takes something that I won't be able to express on the air.
This is a family program.
Yes.
What do you make of that? The NRC has been accused of kind of being in the pocket of the nuclear industry in the past. What do you say to those accusations?
That's an accusation you always get from anti-nuclear groups like the one that Paul represents. I mean, whenever they don't get their way, they complain that they're in bed with the industry.
Only when we quote their spokeswomen.
You're not going to interrupt me, are you? Can you imagine, really, that this NRC organization who has only one responsibility, and that is to help ensure the public safety for the public, that they're somehow going to climb in bed with the industry and